Sleep at night, always thinking about you. But if I had the chance to start all over, I would be wishing today on a four-leaf clover. And even would be the last thing on my mind if I could turn back the hands of time. Turn back the hands of time. Oh, baby. Oh, darling. Hold out much longer.
Hello friends, it's Loma here, otherwise known as Lomalicious, Lomita, or Momo. My grandson calls me Momo, and guess what? You can call me Momo too. I'm a proud grandma. So, thank you for joining me on day 21 of my 28 movies in 28 days for Black History Month. And today's movie is Remember Africville. It's a small documentary made by the National Film Board of Canada. Sorry, my cat. The National Film Board of Canada, and it's available right on YouTube. It's a short documentary that kind of sums it up, and I had to kind of like find different documentaries to watch because I found so many different stories, but I wanted to find one that kind of like explained it all, one that had a lot of people from the community talking and from the government also kind of trying to explain themselves.
To me, that was the world, just the basin and the hills around in Africville.
I remember coming home from school. You could look over, and everybody's house was painted a different color, like rainbow. My golly, it was pretty.
The community itself meant so much. Playing, swimming, wake up in the morning, run right down, have a nice gravy, jump right off the rock in the water, tied in a rope.
Baseball? I didn't go too far with that. No, I didn't. Because I had to do work. I had to work. Yeah.
The reason as well I was dancing in the beginning to that 1970 song was I just wanted you to think, or I wanted to bring this point across about, think of where you were if you were living in Canada in 1970. Think of where you were at that time. I wasn't born yet, but think of, for those of you who were, or your parents, where were you at that time? What were you doing? How were you enjoying your 70s? So I wanted to compare it a bit with the way we think about the 70s, the music, the life, and how you probably were living in your home, enjoying your day-to-day life, while the small community in Halifax, Nova Scotia was losing their homes and losing their livelihood due to their town being demolished by the Canadian government. So if you don't know about Africville, it was a community in Halifax, Nova Scotia. It was a land, the land and homes were owned by Black Canadians since the early 1800s. And they owned it until 1970, where their homes were demolished right from under them. They were not given any notice. They weren't sure when their home would be destroyed.
What I want to know, did you use Africville for a test? Were they guinea pigs for something new? Integration, that is my question, because I still, sitting here tonight listening to you, do not understand exactly what took place.
We accepted the advice of city staff, the advice of an outside expert, Albert Rose, and the advice of the Human Rights Advisory Committee. Second, we, the members of the council, chose relocation over all other alternatives.
Halifax, Nova Scotia. In 1989, this public forum gathered together some of the decision makers and many of the former residents of Africville. They met to re-examine and re-evaluate the decision taken in 1964 to relocate 400 people who lived in Africville, a small black settlement on the shores of Bedford Basin.
We all live in our own homes out here, detached homes, where our children can run around. We couldn't go and live in no apartments today. Segregated, not segregated, but discriminated as we are. Anything happens, the first thing they're going to do is blame us. The Negroes is who done it.
We're free here. We're not contained with this, we're not mixed up with this environment of prejudice or anything. We're people by ourselves.
We never ask nobody for nothing.
And you know what? When they lived in their community, they were self-sufficient. They worked the land. They had jobs. They lived their life, and they were fine. They were fine. The government just wanted the land. And to top it off, when they took them out of their community, they put them in these housing developments, these projects, these housing developments that were even worse conditions than what they were living.
I remember the city saying to these people, if you're not over there, by the time the bulldozer gets finished with one home, then your home will be bulldozed over. You won't give the $500. You won't get the $500 the city is promising to give people. You won't get a home for a home. We won't help you.
They took our homes. They moved us out of Africville in the city garbage trucks. We had a lot better out there than some places they put us in this city. They put us right in, a lot of us, down in the slums. The meanest part that they did to Africville, they got the older people, the old people together. They didn't want to hear anything from the younger generation, because they simply knew that the older people didn't have any education. What is $500 to a 75-year-old Negro? He thinks he's rich.
I remember the trucks coming in. I remember Mrs. Mountley's house, Mrs. Sarah Mountley. Tore it down, never took a stitch of furniture, gave her time to take a stitch of furniture out of her home and knocked it down. They bulldozed it. Mr. James's store was in the hospital, Campbell Hospital, and they bulldozed his house down. The man didn't even know. He come out the hospital and had no place to go.
We have attempted or offered alternative accommodation in our public housing projects. Where these are not immediately available and where we've made settlements, we will move them into city-owned properties. Now, granted, many of these are in the older areas. Many of them are scheduled for ultimate demolition. But as an initial move, they are basically... Many of them are scheduled for ultimate demolition. Many of them are scheduled for ultimate demolition. Demolition. But as an initial move, they are basically better than the accommodation that's available in the Africville area.
All this is owned by Central Mortgage and Housing. You can't do anything to it personally yourself. Like, you can't put anything in it, change the fixtures or anything, because it belongs to the city, right? Like you can see, there's no grass. There's only concrete, no open spaces. When we were out home, out in Africville, we had a lot of open spaces where we could play, and that was all taken away from us. It destroys people's sense of, being who they are, knowing who they are. You're just like another number, number on the block. That's all you are. You don't have no separate identity because everything's the same. My grandmother and a lot of the other people of Africville did not want to leave their community. Long tradition of people, of family and heritage is in the community, and we didn't want to leave. She cried when she had to leave. She was never happy after she left. I believe that the relocation took away 5 years minimum from the lives of our loved ones, of our elders, that we lost because of the move.
Do you enjoy talking about Africville?
No, I don't.
Why not?
Because it hurts me.
Why is that, Mr. Steed? Why does it hurt you to talk about Africville?
Because it's one of the nicest little communities I ever lived in. I'm going to tell you something, I've been around this world twice. I've never met a place like Africville. Never.
But Mr. Steed, everybody thought it was such a bad place.
Who?
All the people who tore it down.
Oh, the people that tore it down. That's the people that tore it down, the city of Halifax, the authorities of the city of Halifax.
They said it was a bad place.
That's what they called it. But it was not to us, it was a heaven, a home, a real home.
So even though they paid their taxes, that community was left to just continue to become run down, that they could be considered condemnable. That is why they had to demolish this town.
Our living conditions were used, it was used as a reason to move us. Even though our situation could have been easily upgraded with some plumbing, some paved roads, the city wouldn't give us this.
City government will have to do more for them to help them acquire a site if they have the competency to do so. And
the money, in other words.
The money, provide the, you will have to give a greater measure of financial assistance and guidance in order to help them overcome the discrimination that does exist. This is a problem, and the only way that you can solve it is to do so with the understanding that well-trained social caseworkers can bring to bear on it. And there must be, in the leadership among the community, an understanding that what is being done is being done in the total public interest, including the best welfare of these people themselves and their children.
The thing is, this was their land, these were their homes, and they were proud homeowners. And the excuse was that the homes weren't livable. That was the excuse, when in reality, they wanted the land for themselves. And they basically got what they wanted.
At that time, people were not concerned by us. They always had that self-styled God complex, that you could not think, that you could not make decisions, that we do all your decision-making for you. And that was what happened in Africville. They went through the exercise of having meetings with the people there, but behind it all, decisions had already been made. That was prime land. That was important land. That this kind of land was not for the black people.
They had a church that was the center, the grounding, the roots of that community. And they just went in and demolished that church. And just to know that that you can, the government can just come in and demolish your home right from under you. Even some of them still had all their belongings inside. It's just a terrible, terrible part of Canadian history. Majority of you listening today have not even heard of this story. It angers me today. No one can just come and tear down my home right where I am right now. No, how could anyone do that? And we've seen the government take these liberties. We feel helpless as that we can't do anything about it. But I think that this is a time for change. And I think that we need to really hold them accountable. Many of these people lost everything they had. And just because they wanted this land because it was near the water. And that's basically what it boiled down to, is that it was prime property, and they were just, even though they paid their taxes, they weren't getting the same maintenance that normally you would get when you do pay your property taxes. And it's just really upsetting. And, you know, there's a lot more to be revealed. And stay tuned, folks, because I want to talk about it all. I am going to actually revisit this topic about Africville, because it's so important that we know our Canadian history, our true Canadian history, and it should anger you, because while you were sitting in front of your fireplace in the winter and had fresh water to drink, these people were not being cared for, not their homes and the land and their town was not given the same resources, and basically they had their homes demolished and everything taken from them. So hopefully we hear more about this, we talk more about this, and hopefully they do get their due justice and reparations due to this horrible injustice that was done to them. If you have been enjoying my videos, please like and subscribe. I give this 10 out of 10. What a surprise. 10 out of 10 momos. And I hope you enjoy some more. Thank you and have a great night.
God, what is this? What is this?
Over the years, there was sporadic talk that something should be done about Africville. But by the early 60s, several official reports from City Hall recommended relocation as the only viable solution.
The folks up here have been going to the city to find out about the roads, the lights, the garbage, and what's the use? It made no difference. You see, the condition of Africville today, this should have never been. If the city had took care of this place, or say half out, instead of being neglecting it, it would have been a lot better than what it is today.
Africville obviously must be redeveloped, and sometimes some people need to be shown that certain things are not in their own best interests and not in the best interest of their children. Now, you do this, you want to take these projects certainly by persuasion to, rather certainly you don't coerce people against their will, but should there be violations of minimum standards, then you have no alternative but to enforce the law, and this is universal for everybody.
You know, in those days, under the National Housing Act, a great deal was happening across the country in terms of removing neighborhoods that had a lot of housing that wasn't up to the minimum standards that the bylaws and so on called for. And this was part of that wave of trying to improve living conditions on the housing front.
The city wants to redevelop it over our people, and I don't think that is fair. I think we should have a chance to redevelop our property as well as anybody else. It's our property been for the last 200 years. It's one thing in this way, when you're in this country and you own a piece of property, you're not a second-class citizen. That's why my people own this land. They work for it, they toil for it, and they work to get this little piece of land that they own, and they try to hang on it. But when your land is being taken away from you and you ain't offered nothing, then you become a peasant in any man's country.